Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we're going to be discussing how we can actually create minimal API within .NET 7. We're going to be utilizing an in-memory database and we're going to be seeing how we can actually create a full CRUD operation within our minimal API with just a few simple lines of code. So if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. As well, if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. Now, grab your cup of coffee and let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking that we have the latest version of the .NET framework installed on our machine, and then we're going to be creating our minimal web API to have a functionality of a to-do application. And basically from there we're going to be implementing the basic CRUD operation for a to-do utilizing minimal APIs, and we're going to be seeing in basically how we can have a full-fledged API working in like basically 30 or 40 lines of code. So let's get started. So first of all, what we're going to be doing here is inside our terminal, let us check out the version of our .NET. So we're going to put .NET -- version, and we're going to be seeing here that I have the latest version installed, which is going to be version 7.0.100. Perfect. And now that's done, the next step is for me to create my application. I'm going to put .NET new web API. I'm going to put -minimal. So it makes the minimal API. I'm going to give it a name and I'm going to give it to do API. Very simple. And here basically we can see that my ASP.NET web API has been created, but it didn't tell me that it's minimal. But once I open it, we can see it's going to be a minimal web API. So let me open this in Visual Studio Code. And inside my Visual Studio Code, I can see that I have an application which is basically going to be my web API. As you can see here that I only have a program.cs file. I don't have a controllers folder. I don't have a views folders. I don't have anything except my program.cs, which is going to be the main, the only file was going to be put the information for my minimal API. So if we take a look here, we can see that I have a bin, an obj, a properties, but the rest of it is just basically the program.cs and the develop app settings and CS Proj. So from this, what we're going to be doing is let us open our program.cs, and we can see here that some boilerplate code that Microsoft provide out of the box that's available for us. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be removing this. We don't need it right now. And I'm going to be removing this endpoint. We don't also need it. And I'm going to be removing this. We don't need it as well. And right now, if we take a look at this, and let's remove these, we don't need these. And we can see here that 17 lines of code, it's going to give us a full web API with the Swagger enabled. I can trim this a bit even lower. So what I can do, if I can remove these, let me remove this. Tell you what, let me copy this so we can put it back later. But if I remove all of this, and I remove this, and I remove this, and I remove this, and now we can see that within 3 lines I can actually, let me open my terminal, and all I'm going to be doing here is just put .NET build. Okay, I need to go to the folder, then put .NET build, and here we can see that it has been built succeeded. And if I put .NET run, it's not going to do anything, but because it's an empty application. But we can see right now I have a full-fledged web API working with the simple 3 lines of code, and that's the main benefit of it. So I don't really need to have a full set of controllers. I don't have to put all of that overhead that I need in order for me to create a API. Microsoft is taking care of all of that in the background. Here we can see within 3 lines of code, I was able to basically have my API up and running. I can add, for example, any endpoint within a single line, and I'll have like an API running as well. So here we can see the simplicity that the minimal API brings to the table. So let us stop this for now. And let me put these back how it was, because we're going to be utilizing Swagger. So let us take advantage of it, and let's keep this. I think that should be fine. Let us just do another .NET build to make sure everything is running as it should be. Okay, perfect. So The first thing that we're going to be doing after what we have put this back is we're going to be actually creating our record. So instead of utilizing a folder which contain going to be a data model and then we're going to be creating a class there, we're going to be utilizing a record. And then a record is basically a feature that has been introduced within .NET 6 and C# 10. And basically it allows us to create a model directly from it, an object directly from a record. So without going through all of the boilerplate of doing all of those initializations. So let's see how we can do that. So at the end of this, we're gonna just add the record and we're gonna call it item. And here we're gonna just give it an ID. We're gonna give it a title and we're just gonna give it a boolean if it's completed or not. So that's a simple record, and basically here this record is going to represent a class if you want, and that class is going to have an ID, a title, and a boolean if it's completed or not. And here we can see if I want to create this as a class, let's say for example I want to create as a representation, I'm going to say item 2 just for the, so we can represent item version 2, and here it's going to be something similar to this: ID, prop, string, title, and prop, boolean, completed. So here we can see that instead of me having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code in order for me to create this object, I was able to basically create a record, and all of these getters and setters will be automatically initialized for me through the record object instead of me having to do that through a class. So here we can see that how we can actually keep our code very minimal. To make it easier for us, we're not going to be integrating with a database right now. We're just going to be building a in-memory database where we can actually store our to-do items. So for that, we're going to be creating a simple service, which is going to be actually mimicking this database interaction, where we're going to be creating a dictionary. We're going to put everything that we need inside this dictionary, and we're going to be creating some of the main CRUD operation for the database directly there. So here what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be adding a class, and we're going to call it item repository. And I'm just going to create a private read-only dictionary, and it's gonna have an int which is gonna be the ID of my item, and then we're gonna have the item itself. Perfect. And I'm gonna call it underscore items. Very simple. So now I'm gonna basically add the information that I need in order for me to do the CRUD operation against this in-memory database. So first of all, what I want to do is whenever I'm actually initializing this, instead of me trying to add always some to-do items to it, I want to have some built-in to-do items so it will directly represent it for me. But we're gonna be adding some maybe 2 or 3 to-do items, so we don't have to always have to recreate them. So for me to do that inside the constructor, I'm just gonna create a constructor, and we'll just make it ourselves. We'll make it public item repository, and I'm just gonna put var item1 equal new item 1. I'm just gonna say go to the gym, and is it done? I'm gonna put false, and then let's copy paste this. So I'm just gonna create other 2 extra items. So it's gonna be item 2 and item 3, and we're gonna give them different IDs. So item 2, item 3, and this one it could be, let's say, go to the supermarket. And this one it could be finish the essays, something like that. Okay, so once we have done that, now let's add them. So it's gonna be underscore items dot add, and it's gonna be item 1, and we'll do this for the rest. So why is not happy? New item, okay. Oh, okay. We need to make sure that we're giving it the ID. So it's gonna be item, item1 dot ID, comma item1. So let's copy this because we need to give it a key and a value. So let's make it here item 2, item 2, item 3, and item 3. Great. So now that we have basically created our in-memory database and we were able to initialize it whenever the application is running, now let's create those CRUD operations. So the first one is we're going to get every item inside our to-do. It's going to be public. It's going to return an enumerable of items. And here what we're going to be doing is I'm going to call it get all. Very simple. Get all. And all it's going to be doing is simply returning items in a to list. Very simple. So that's my get all. The other one is gonna be get by ID. So item, public get item. I'm gonna get by ID. And here the ID is gonna be an int. And all I'm gonna be doing here is I'm gonna put underscore items. And I'm gonna pass the ID. Very simple. Also, I need to give it ID here. Great. With this why it's not happy. Let's make this as a list. And here I want to put dot values. Perfect. Now the third one is going to be adding an object, for example. So we're going to make it a public again. Void. We're not going to add anything. I'm just going to say add. And it's going to take an item. I'm gonna call it obj as an object, and it's gonna be basically underscore items dot add, and basically it's gonna be the same thing. So obj dot id and obj. Perfect. Now we're gonna be basically updating it. So what we can say is we can do public void again. Update is going to take an item again, and again it's going to be obj, and here what we're going to be doing is we're just going to put item, and we're going to be basically matching on the ID itself. So it's underscore items, and we're going to put obj dot id equal obj, and that will basically update my object for me. And lastly, we're going to be deleting, and that's going to be very simple. Public void delete. We're just going to pass the ID, and this will allow us to basically items dot remove, and here we're going to pass the ID. So as we can see, it's a very simple CRUD operation. What we did here, which is basically just the preparation here, which took a lot of time, which is basically creating an in-memory database, which is going to be a dictionary, adding 3 items to it, and then basically creating the 5 CRUD operation that we want to do against this in-memory database. And these 5 CRUD operations, as we can see, they are basically add, delete, update, get all, and get by ID. So once we have done all of that, the next step is we're going to be starting linking this to our minimal API. So the first thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to create our first endpoint, and this first endpoint is going to allow us to actually see all of the items that we have inside our minimal API. And for us to do that, we're going to be coming here on the line maybe 5, and we actually 5, yeah, let's add it here on line 14. We're going to put app.mapget. And basically what we're going to be doing here is we're going to define the endpoint that we're going to be hitting in order for us to get this information. And I'm just going to put items. So when we go to our minimal web API, I put /items. It's going to get me all of the items that exist. And that's going to be the endpoint that I'm going to be requesting. And here we're just going to say and then here I'm gonna basically try to create a delegate function, and this delegate function here is gonna be responsible for connecting to my repository and basically execute the get all items. So for that, all I'm gonna be doing here is put parentheses, and then it's gonna be from services, and then I'm gonna put item repository. I'm gonna call it items, and then it's gonna be something like this. Let's close this, and I'm gonna put items dot, actually it's going to be return items dot get all. And now let us just fix those references here. And now that's it. And now let's build this .NET build. We can see it's building successfully. Now let's run it. .NET run. We can see it's running. Let's copy this URL and let's open our web browser. And let's paste this here. And let's go to /swagger/index.html. And we're going to be seeing here that we have our get items. And if I try it out, execute, it gives me an error. Let's see what this error is. Okay, it's telling us that we did not register yet the service. Completely fine. We're going to be register the service before we can actually utilize it. So let's just fix this right now. So inside my, actually on top of my program.cs, so before we actually do the builder application, all I'm going to be doing is put builder.services.add singleton, and here I'm going to add the application, actually the service, which is going to be item repository. And all I need to do is this. And now let us stop the application and run it again. And now let's go back to my web browser. Let me execute this again. And as we can see here, let me see if you can see this properly. Okay, let me zoom in. Put this here. Okay. And if I make this a bit bigger, okay, yes. As you can see here, that I'm getting back the responses, which is gonna be 1, 2, and 3. And all I needed to do here is basically just include my service, or basically register my service inside my DI container or my dependency injection container. And all I did other than that is just creating a in-memory database, which is going to be representing here my data dictionary. And then basically what I was able to do, I was able to create all of this CRUD operations in a few lines of code. And to be fair, I can even trim this even more by basically removing all of this logic from here and maybe read a JSON file and just automatically populate it. But this should be do for now. So as we can see here, with a very simple and with very minimal lines of code, I was able to have a full-fledged working web API. I was able to get the information from my in-memory database. So now let's add another endpoint, which is going to be allowing us to get the user by ID or get the item by ID. And basically from there, we can be able to see how we can get the results back. So let's go back here. And after they get all get items, which basically get everything, I'm just going to put app.map get. I'm gonna put /items/ID, and because that's based on that ID, I'm gonna get the specific item, and it's gonna be very similar to what I did previously. So it's gonna be parentheses from service, and then inside of here I'm gonna put the service that I want to utilize, which is item repository items. And then I'm gonna pass the query string, which is gonna be the ID, so it's gonna be int ID. And then I'm gonna actually build this, and then all I'm gonna say here is return items.getById, and I'm gonna pass the ID here. Very simple, straight to the point. Now let's stop this and let's run this again. And let us go back to my web browser and let me refresh this. So here you can see I have two endpoints now, which is get items and get items by ID. So let's try first get items to make sure it's still working. We can see I'm getting all of my information back. And if I get to get by items by ID, I try it out. It asks me what ID do you want. So let's say I want to get the first one. So I put ID number 1, execute, and you can see here I got the to do item, which is go to the gym, and if it's completed, no. So again, very simple. I was able to get through all of this. Now let's continue building the rest of our API. So the next endpoint that we're going to be building is basically the ability for us to add an item to our to-do list. So let's check how it's done. So after the map item by ID, so we're going to put app.map post, because we're going to be posting item to our API, and we're just going to make it /items. And from here, we're just going to do the same structure as before. We're going to utilize the from service. And then we're going to utilize the item repository and we're gonna call it items, and we're gonna see what are we expecting. We're gonna be expecting an item, and we're just gonna call it item, and then we're gonna basically create like a lambda, and then from here we're gonna be utilizing the items to add. So we're gonna say if, first of all, we need to make sure that the ID that we are trying to add does not already exist inside our dictionary, or our dictionary will not accept it. So in order for us to do that, we're gonna put items. Actually, yeah, we can put items dot get by ID. Actually, yeah, items dot get by ID, and it's gonna be item dot ID, and we're gonna see if it's equal to null. We'll add it. So we're gonna put items dot add, and we're gonna add the item dot ID and then the item itself. And then in case, let's see why it's not happy. Oh, we just need to add the item, sorry. Okay, so that's in case it does not exist. If in case exists, and once that exists, we can return basically result dot created, and then from here we can just return the path. So it's gonna be something like that, / items / item.id, and then we're just gonna return the object itself as well, item. And unless it's created, we're just gonna be returning results dot let's say not found, no, bad request. Let's return a bad request. Okay, I think that should be it. So what we're doing here is basically we're trying to we're mapping to the default root of our endpoints, and we're making it a post. We're initializing the service to add items to our repository. We're passing the item that we want to add, and once that's done, what we're doing is we're checking if it already exists inside our ID, because this is a dictionary. If it's null, we're adding it. If not, we're returning a bad request. So let's try this out. So .NET, let's do build, and then let's do .NET run. Perfect. Now let's go to our web browser, and here inside our web browser, let us refresh, and we can see here that we have our post. So let's try it out. I'm just gonna put ID number 5, for example. I'm gonna put the title is let's say clean my desk, and completed I'm gonna put false, and execute. I was able to get a 500. Why? The given key 5 was not present in the dictionary. Okay. Oh, okay. So we need to adjust this a bit, so in case it returns a null. So for now, what we can do, let us update this for a bit. Where is it? Get by ID. And what we can do here is I think it should be something like this. We can put items dot check or get something keys dot exist keys dot see what for this. What we can do, I think it should be something like dot contains key. Yeah, this is it. And we're gonna pass the key, which is gonna be item dot so it's gonna be the ID, and this is gonna return basically a boolean. So we're gonna say var result. So if it is true, so if result is true, we're basically returning this object, else we're returning null. And and here what we're gonna doing is we need to make this as a nullable. So I think that should work. So let's stop this and let's try this again. And let's go back here and let's execute this again. And we were able to get it because it worked.
Let's make this a bit smaller, so let's take this from here. Let's make it like this. Let's remove this. And let's make it something even like this. Let's try to make it optimized. So let's keep the return here. And it could be something like this. So in case equal to null. In case if it's true. So what we can do is we're returning that response. Else we're returning null. And what we can do as well, we can just convert this into back to the lambda functions, and we can have it like this. Nice and easy. Okay. So basically what we're doing here is we're getting the item, we check if it contains the ID. If it is, we're returning it, else we're returning null. Let's stop this again and let's add a new one. So let's go back to my web browser here and let's create a new one. So this, if we make it 6, and here we can say, for example, let's say create a new article, for example, completed false, execute. We can see we got the 6 to 01, which means that it has been created successfully. And now if I get all items, I should be able to see them here. So we can see you have 1, 2, 3, and then I got create a new article here. Perfect. And if basically, let's see, S2 5 again, let's say clean my desk, and then I execute this, we got a 201, and then execute this, we got all of them. Perfect. So now that our adding a new item to our list is working, so basically now we are able to get everything. We are able to get a single item and we are able to add. So the 2 items we're still missing is basically the ability for us to update and to basically delete, and that's gonna be the next item that we're gonna be building right now. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. Let's stop this and let's go up here after the map post. And for this, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be actually creating the map put, because we're going to be updating our endpoint, or basically updating our object. So we're going to put app.map put, and here we're going to put /items/id. Perfect. And then again, we're going to be utilizing the same thing. We're going to be utilizing those services. So we're going to put from services, and we're going to put here item repository, again items. We're going to take the int ID, and then we're going to take the item itself, and then we're going to be creating a lambda function. And from here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking the same thing. So if it exists, if it's null, we cannot update it. So we need to return a bad request. If it does exist, we can update it. So we can say something like this: if items.getById, and we need to pass the ID equal null. We're going to be returning a bad request. So return results dot bad request, else we're going to be basically items dot update, and we're going to pass the item itself, and we're going to finally return results dot, well, because it's an update, we can return no content, and that should be it. So let's try this out. So let's do .NET build. Perfect. Now let's do .NET run. Great. So now let's go back to our application and to our web browser, and let us just execute this again. We should be able to have 3. So what I want to do is I want to update go to the gym to true. So let me copy this here, and first let's refresh. For refresh, we can see first I have the put here. So let's click on try it out. So the ID is going to be 1, and the object here, I'm going to change this to true. And let's see if that will work. Execute. And I got a 204, which means that has been updated correctly. And now if I get all of my items, I should be able to see it as true. And I can see here that it has been updated as true. Now let's try to update one item which does not currently exist and see if we're gonna get a bad request or not. So let's go back here, and I'm gonna change this ID to 8, and then here ID 8 again, and I'm gonna just execute. And now we should receive a bad request because basically we did not have that ID available. Perfect. So the last action that we want to add here is basically the ability for us to delete an object from our list. So let's do this right now. So let's go back to our source code. Let's stop this. And then what we want to do is we want to go up here. Yes, after the map.put. So because we're going to be deleting is we're going to be utilizing the delete. So app.delete, map delete. And it's going to be similar. So we're going to put /items, /ID. And we're going to be utilizing the same structure. So we're going to put from requests, from services, sorry. So, and let's remove the word attribute. And here we're going to just utilize the item repository. And then we're going to put items. And then actually, yeah, items, and just we're going to take the ID. We don't need anything else. And let's do the same logic that we have done previously. So we need to check if this ID exists or not. So if items dot get by ID, we're going to pass the ID itself. So if it is null, we're going to be returning a bad request. Bad request. Else what we can do, we can just delete. So we're going to put item dot delete, and we're going to pass the ID itself, and then we're going to be return the results dot no content again. Okay, perfect. So now let us just do another build and .NET run. Perfect. Now let's go back to my web browser, and let me refresh this one here. And now as you can see, I have my 5 endpoints available. So I have a get, post, a get all, and I have a put, and I have a delete. So I have all of them available for me. Now let me try it out. So I'm gonna get, here I have everything in my list. So what I wanna do is I wanna try to delete this one. So delete ID number 3. So let's come here to the delete, try it out. Let's put ID 3, execute, no content. Now if I try to get all again, I should not be able to get it. I only see 2. And here we can see I only have 2 inside my list. Now let's try to delete something which doesn't exist, say 5 or 3 again, because we just deleted it. We should receive 400. If I put 5, 400, which means a bad request. Okay, perfect. So what we have done here throughout this video is basically we were able to utilize .NET 7 to create minimal API, and basically we were able to create the different endpoints that we need to have, which is going to be the 5 main endpoints for a CRUD operation. And once we have done that, we're able to test it out and making sure it works. So one last thing that we want to add today is we're going to implement one of the new functionalities within .NET 7, which is grouping, and we're going to see how we can implement this right now. So let's go back to our source code, and we're going to be basically adding something here which is going to allow us. So as we can see, first of all, let us explain what grouping is. So as we can see, for all of our endpoints, we have /items, and we have something after that which basically going to allow us to see if it's going to be a post, we're going to add an object there, or for a delete, for example, we're adding a query string, which is the ID. So instead of having /items repeated, and that could cause, for example, some problems, or for example, for typos, something like that, that's a simplistic case. If, for example, we're having a much more complicated minimal APIs where we have, for example, different users, and we want to basically have certain routes per users, we can basically update that to have /, for example, like /admin, and then the correspondent endpoint, or for /app user, for example, and with a corresponding endpoint, so on and so forth. And instead of having all of those configurations available in every single map.get that we get, or basically within every single endpoint, what we can do is we can see the benefit of actually mapping all of these together and basically grouping them. And that way, for example, for everything which is related for the admin, for example, we can just put it in a certain, we can put them all together and basically we can group them and utilize one single endpoint that's going to be referring. We're going to be seeing how we can apply this right now. But its ability, the main reason that we're utilizing this is for us to have the ability to basically manage our code and basically have much better readability of our code and much more better structure for our code. So let's see how we can implement this. So what I'm going to be doing here is, before any of my endpoints, I'm going to be basically creating var, and I'm going to recall it items because it's an items that we want. And then basically what I want to do is I want to tell that my application that I want to group. So I'm going to utilize the app.map group, and here basically I want to give it the name of what I want to group for, and here all I'm going to put is /items. And now this is basically going to be the main group that I want to follow. And once I have created this group that I want to follow, or basically I did the /items, I can attach this item. So if you take a look here, I have, for example, app.mapget, app.mapget again, app.mappost, so on and so forth. But because I have here the app.map group, what I can do is I can utilize the items here, and instead of utilizing the items.mapget, I can just .app, I can utilize items, and basically what that will allow me to do is, for all of these requests that have /items, it will basically inherit it directly from here. So let's say I want to change this to do items instead of items. I have to change it in only one place rather than change it in 5 different endpoints that I currently have. And now what I need to do is I need to update the rest of my endpoints so they don't have items /items. So I want to make them that have to be a much more smooth and synchronized endpoint route. So let's do this right now. So here what I need to do is I can just delete this. And for this here, I can just remove this items. Here I can remove this. I can remove this and this. I can remove this and this. And that should be it. So now let's stop this and let's do a .NET build. Perfect. Now let's do a .NET run. And now let's go to my web browser and let me refresh this one. And first of all, you can see here, nothing has changed here. I still have items, basically the same route that I had. And let's go back for a second. And here, instead of actually having it hard-coded here, what I'm doing is I made it all dynamically based on that. So let's try to get it all, see if it all works. Execute. Basically, I'm still able to get everything. Now, let's say I want to change, let me stop the application. Let me change this from items to do items, for example. Anything that I want. And now let's try this again. And let me refresh here. And here you can see with a single line of code, that single point that I have changed, I was able to change all of my endpoint from items / into to do items with a single line of code. And that's one of the main powers of grouping. I have much more control and much more structure if I want to update or map my APIs. So let's try this again. So let's come here and let's try it out. Execute. Perfect. And here you can see that I was able to actually get everything that I want. Okay, great. So now that we have applied this mapping grouping within the minimal API, this feature is only available within .NET 7, and there's a lot of new enhancement that came in with .NET 7 that I highly encourage you to take a look at. I hope this video was helpful. Let us do a quick recap of what we have done today. So basically, we're able to create a new minimal API within .NET 7. We were able to create the an in-memory database, and then we're creating some kind of a service. Then we injected that service into our minimal API. And then we created our 5 endpoints. And once we have created those 5 endpoints, we were able to group them and utilize, one of the main benefits that .NET 7 provides.
for minimal APIs. So once that has been done, we have tested it out and everything is working. I hope this video was helpful. Please like, share and subscribe if it was. If you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. And thank you very much for watching and have a great day.